Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CHP podcast. I'm your host, Ariana Scalfo, and I am here today with Laura Corden. I met Laura really randomly. I think someone just directed me your way through the battle bunker stuff, but then it turned out that Corinna knew you. I don't know. But Laura's super awesome. She is a PhD candidate in clinical psychology. She's pursuing a career where she can use her love of different fitness modalities to help individuals overcome adverse stress responses. Areas of interest for Laura include trauma-informed weightlifting, ocean therapy, recreational therapy, and breath work. And in Laura's free time, she loves to paint upcycled canvases. She painted the mural behind her, so walls, and owns two dogs who are rescues from Baja and who are the loves of her life. So clearly you can see why I'm obsessed with Laura. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much.
It's cool. And I'm really happy to have you on here because I know you and I have had a couple conversations where we've just clicked immediately about our ideas about hybrid fitness, what's important, what's not. And I really love the way that you use your degree, obviously, and your education, and then the ways that you use that not only to help people in your career, but also to educate your fitness practice and then also coaching. So if you can just talk me through a little bit, whatever you feel is pertinent to share, what does being a PhD candidate in psychology look like for you, and how are you using that and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I first got started with mental health and working in that field before the COVID pandemic. I was working in the detox department of a mental health facility that helped with addiction rehabilitation. And it was Medi-Cal funded and it was a wild ride. But because I was in detox, I really became very familiar with what happens when you're coming down off of fentanyl, what maintenance assisted treatment looks like in terms of having Suboxone, Subutex, methadone. And I realized that my personality was really well fit for this type of work. And it dawned on me a lot of times when I was speaking with my program manager that because of the stuff that I do outside of my own mental health work, I was really able to have that calm demeanor, help individuals in crisis, and really help re-regulate them and bring them back down to earth. Fast forward a couple years, I ended up in a program that I love right now. And so I'm working on really trying to integrate all of the work that I do outside of my traditional job. I'm now back at an addiction rehab facility and integrating that in ways that really can help people overcome that stress response, especially if there's PTSD diagnoses, substance abuse, figuring out ways that we can cope in a non-maladaptive way.
I think that's so awesome. I think that's so cool. I think, for me personally, a huge part of my fitness journey, whatever you want to call it, was overcoming. I don't know whether you wanted to call it a trauma response or just anxiety about kinesthesia. What is it? Kinesiophobia,
Mm-hmm.
um, where because of my conditions, I was conditioned for all movement to hurt. I was conditioned for everything to be avoided. Being short of breath was a sign of a panic attack or a heart issue. It wasn't effort. So it took me a really long time to piece those together for myself and find safety in my own body and kind of disconnect that instant panic response where I would have panic attacks during exercise because I thought I was in trouble. And it's just because exercise is genuinely uncomfortable. Um, and finding a safe spot in that for me was huge because I think without pushing myself and without getting to the point where I was comfortable navigating my own discomfort and feeling safe in my own body, I don't think I would be who I am today. So I really, really love that because I think it's a conversation that's not being had enough, especially from my perspective, in the chronic pain community. But I'm sure as well in the addictive community as well. I'm sure there's a lot of stigma that you have to overcome as well, and a lot
Yes.
of work just getting people to accept that something could be normal for them again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that phrase that you use, feeling safe in your own body, because that's the whole theory and understanding behind trauma informed weightlifting. Like rather than having a coach who thinks that maybe you're not trying as hard because you're withholding effort or you don't think that you can do it, their understanding of, oh, this person is in a place of learning about their body, understanding their emotional response and really working to reprogram that. So that was a really beautiful way to phrase it. I love that.
It's been a really long, convoluted, and continuous
Yeah.
practice. But yeah, I really resonate with the work that you're doing. I think that's really cool. And I
Oh,
know
thank
that in your personal life, when you train, it looks like, and feel free to correct me if I'm incorrect or add to this, but it looks like you do weightlifting, running, and other like sort of endurance sports. And then you also surf. And then you just started doing what you were just telling me about, which is deep end fitness, which is actually like pool based underwater exercise, which just sounds so cool.
Yeah. Deep End Fitness is up and coming. It's really taking off right now. And I love it so much because we were talking this morning. We had a big wave surfer come in, and he's one of the instructors for Deep End Fitness. And his niche, his area of expertise is sort of like, you're going to feel good in the pool when we're safe and we're all here and supporting you. How can we replicate a stimulus that's similar to panic, like maybe out in the ocean if you lose yourself on a big wave? And help you practice safety here so that way you're safe out there. So today we had this really wonderful opportunity to do a lot of out of water exercises, burpees, lunges, flutter kicks, and then after 30 seconds of intense work, jumping directly into the water, practicing that breath hold, seeing how our panic response triggered us, and really trying to mentally combat that in the moment and try and get that breath hold for as long as we could. And it's a wild ride. You learn so much about yourself, and it's a very introspective experience. And it's all done with the support of the coaches and the instructors and the people around you. So it's a very safe environment.
I think that's really cool because something that we do at CHP that we use a lot, especially for our martial artists, military as well, but especially martial artists, MMA, especially jiu-jitsu where chokes are allowed. We do a lot of breath hold tables from diving and a lot of breath hold work to teach our athletes to tolerate higher levels of CO2 than they may find comfortable, and then how to regulate and handle that stress response during our workout. So we might have them, ride an airdyne and then do a breath hold and then get back on the airdyne and then do a breath hold. So it's something that we've utilized a lot with our clients to try and get them and their stress response down during literally being attacked. Like there's so much stress in that moment. And a lot of athletes interpret that as loss of fitness when in
Yes.
reality it's just heightened stress, and getting them to find that nice safe understanding of like, okay, I'm calm, I can regulate here, and getting comfortable with that feeling of having very high CO2 in your blood, either from holding your breath because you're blocking or punching, or holding your breath because you're going to choke or something similar. um, but I love that because it's something that I'm seeing as so effective for so many different sports that I never even thought about, but I would assume especially for water, like
Oh,
any
yeah.
sort of sport where you're going to be submerged, because breath holds. Like,
Yeah. Very similar stimulus. Yeah. And I mean,
yeah.
I feel like I see that throughout weightlifting as well, which I love watching individuals really practice like the big brace before a big lift and being able to engage with that moment of, I'm not feeling super confident. This is a heavy weight, but I'm going to mentally engage and like enact the brace, hold my breath, and be confident on the way up. And so I feel like you can similarly have that experience of I'm working through a stress response, and paired with it too, what I've seen a lot, especially in the women that I personally train, is that they're building a sense like of higher self-esteem and confidence, which I think if you do have an adverse stress response, it might be because of some form of trauma. So in a two birds one stone facet, you're also working on the stress response but also rebuilding that sense of strength and self-esteem, which I really love.
Yeah, that like really strong self-efficacy and like understanding of your own resilience. Like, okay, I can tolerate this. I did
Yes.
the thing. I'm
Mhm.
okay. I'm gonna do the thing again next week, and I'm still gonna be okay. That that's huge for someone
Mhm.
who may not have ever experienced that in a controlled, safe, progressive environment. I think in a lot of cases, we may experience that, but like once, and go on a tough hike, and then we're like, wow, I did that, and then it's 3 years later and we haven't done anything like it. Um, I think in this case, you're giving women the opportunity to come back the next week or the next day, or a few days later, and do it again.
Yes,
Do it again.
repetition is so key with
Yep.
stress response exposure. It's so key.
Yep. So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit more about like stress response exposure um, and how you approach that. I mean, even you can talk about yourself, a particular client, or just how this expresses in your work and in your training. Because I think that a lot of coaches and a lot of clients are aware that this occurs, but I think sometimes having a name for something allows you to then create a plan and
Yes.
also not judge yourself.
Yeah, I think that for me and my own journey with it, it started with the book Man's Search for Meaning and Viktor Frankl articulating that moment of pause that we have before we respond. And then further in my education, the idea of negative cycles came up, and the idea that if you have an adverse reaction to emotions, because you know that emotions they signal a lack of safety to your body. At some point something happened and you were like, if I feel this way, it means my physical safety's in jeopardy. And at that point your body's like fight or flight, I can't function, I can't think, which sometimes can be beneficial. Certain athletes are able to override that, but the majority of us, when we hit that heightened state of fight or flight, really can't come back down. Our heart rate's too high to actually grab a barbell or to think or to compose ourselves for a moment. So the ability to input that pause is like extremely important in being able to re-regulate and sort of break that negative cycle. If it's just simply exercising is new to me and I'm having that experience of like out of body, I've never had my heart rate this high, so now I'm in fight or flight, or it could be related to something else that's happened to you outside of the gym. But being able to sort of target that cycle, break it down, and bring awareness to the athlete and that insight is so key into helping them develop new stress responses.
I think that's brilliant because I think, even just for me especially, there were a lot of moments where I would go running with Alex and I would be like, I'm breathing heavy. I suck. This means that I'm not fit. My legs hurt. I'm breathing really fast. I'm breathing really heavy. I must be bad at this. And then I would get to the top and he would be like white from exhaustion and effort. Like, because he's also faster than me. So he's like in front of me. So I'm just judging myself the whole time and just negatively spinning this entire reaction that I'm having physically into a negative emotional judgment of like where I was. And I would get to the top and he would be like near vomiting with effort. And I would be like, holy crap, I'm nowhere near that.
Yeah, that line of effort. Yeah.
And no wonder he's faster than me. I'm not pushing that hard. Like, I need to be comfortable with getting to that level, or I need to acknowledge that I don't like being there and be okay with either a longer journey to getting that fast or just being slower. And like,
Yeah.
I have to be okay with that. Like that for me was huge because then I was able to just sit in that like heavy breathing and that discomfort and the burning in my legs and be like, I'm safe, I'm fine, I'm not. This is because I'm fit. This is because I'm doing something difficult. Um,
Yes.
and being able to like reframe that over and over. uh, but yeah, the way that we judge ourselves in the moment, I think, can really negatively impact how we perceive a stimulus or perceive something that's happening to us. Um, and I see it happening a lot in my athletes that may not have necessarily traditional CPTSD or PTSD like responses, but do suffer from either things like perfectionism or anxiety or um, being very judgmental of themselves.
Yes.
There's a lot of judgment that happens during an activity and during a performance that negatively impacts the rest of it. Like, I think that's just being able to go, oh, this is a stress response.
Yes.
All
And
the
I think
power.
Yeah, and I think so many athletes that have that happen to them while they're working out have it happen to them in every area of their life. Like when they
Yeah.
encounter stress at work, when they encounter stress in relationships, you start to see people get really uncomfortable with that emotional experience. And instead of being able to say, wait, this is temporary emotion, how can I figure out a way to overcome this? It's usually like the emotion is too much, I'm going to back away, or in some instances engage in a maladaptive coping mechanism like substance use. And so being able to challenge it in these like controlled athletic environments, you master it here and then you take it with you as you go out into other areas of the world and you see that improvement. It's like, oh my gosh, like working out is so much more than just lifting weights. It's literally the key to this amazing life.
Yeah. There's not too many other areas of life where we can expose ourselves to controlled discomfort in that way, in such a safe way. And like you said, in such a repetitive way. Um, and not too many other areas in life have such accessible coaches.
Yep.
Like it's not too many other things have people that are like literally lining up to be like, I'll guide you through this. Like not
Yeah.
much else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you talk about like maladaptive responses
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that there are coping mechanisms out there, and we say substance abuse, I think, because obviously that's one that you're working very, very intimately with. But are there any other like common maladaptive responses you see to stress, either um, through sort of like avoidance or circuitous thinking or anything like that? Anything that like pops up a lot, especially in your coaching in the athletic world, or
In the coaching and athletic world, I see a lot, especially for my female athletes, disordered eating comes up a lot. And
that's
the conversation sort of it edges in this direction of, well, if I work with a nutritionist or if I work with a registered dietitian, I think this will help me. And we have to have that tough conversation of you need to improve your relationship with food first, and the fact that you use this as a conduit for control before that information from a specialist is going to have an impact on you. And so I think that that's something, it's so crazy because, like, more of a process addiction, we need food to survive. We can't cut it out as like this thing that's helping or like keeping us from achieving our goals. You need to eat every single day. So, how do
yeah.
we improve the relationship with it is definitely the conversation I'm having a lot of these days.
It's so tough. I talk about, I'm like, food is a 24/7 thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Nothing else in our lives is like that. I mean, you leave a gym, you
Yep.
leave, you go home, but like
Yep.
there's food everywhere and you can't even get away from it. And advertising, it's in the checkout lanes of every store, not just grocery stores. You go to buy gas and there's all kinds of snacks and things, and there's just food and colors. It's a really difficult environment. Um, and I think what you said about control is so key, because whether we are overeating or undereating, both are a method of regulation and control. Um, and I think they can very easily become negative for the athlete when they supersede the primary goal, which is health, wellness, and performance. And then everything revolves around continuous control over diet or meal times or food quality. I see it a lot actually in clients that um, really adhere very closely to restrictive eating patterns that don't at face value seem like orthorexia, but
Mhm.
a lot of the ways that they decide to make these changes or introduce these restrictions are in a lot of ways control and fear based. So very restrictive diets, like being vegan, but not because you believe in the sort of veganism overarching ideal, but fear of health issues, or it
Yes.
will make me thinner, or doing keto not because you have a health problem or because it's been recommended by your doctor or something similar, but simply because you want to lose weight faster or you're afraid of carbohydrates. I see that a lot as well, like inclusion or exclusion of food groups, or like excessive supplement use. Um,
Mhm.
to the point where you're like, dude, you just have really expensive pee. Calm down.
Yes, I
Um,
know.
um, so I'm
That
sure you've encountered that.
resonates.
Yeah.
Yeah. I so for a lot of my more like I would say cognitive behavioral therapy approaches that I use with clients who are processing their substance use addiction, I use more of a narrative therapy approach for individuals who are working through their relationship with food. And a lot of that has to do with like starting the journaling process, which so many people are a little bit hesitant to do. But what does a conversation about food sound like in my head? What words am I using? Am I saying that this is fuel? Am I saying that I'm punishing myself? Am I saying that I don't deserve to eat this because I need to look a certain way for photographs? What does that conversation look like? And then from there we can start to piece together dialogue and verbiage that happens internally that's going to help facilitate the athlete to eat in a way that's going to fuel them as opposed to hinder them just based on this need for control.
I really love food journaling. That's like always where I start
Yep.
with
Yep.
people. Because like 9 times out of 10, the changes that need to be made are like not food related.
Mm-hmm.
They're not.
You're
They're
not.
like behavioral. They're thought patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another thing that I like to do with journaling, just like you said, is have those conversations, but also before they eat, sitting down and just jotting down, even in their phone, like how they're feeling before they eat,
Yes.
what they've chosen to eat. I don't care about amounts. I don't give a hoot. And
Yeah.
then how they feel after it. Do they feel satisfied? Do they still feel hungry? Did they feel stressed when they sat down? Did they even sit down? And just all those like very environmental cues as well, because I find that for a lot of us, um, those coping mechanisms that we're reading as poor behaviors and judging ourselves for are actually just us reacting to really unhelpful environmental cues or things that are happening in our environment that are just really difficult.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
they're just hard. And
Yeah.
getting people to start thinking more proactively as well instead of reactively and judging themselves throughout it, I
Mm-hmm.
think can be super helpful. And I love that idea of the narrative tool because then you're allowing people to really actually guide themselves through the process.
Yes, I'm a big proponent of that more intuitive eating. I definitely look into the amount of protein that I'm getting, but I ask myself constantly throughout the day, have I fueled myself appropriately for what I want to do today in the gym? Or before I go to a deep end session, have I given myself the fuel I need to go kick some serious butt today?
Yeah.
Like where am I at fuel wise? And like changing that just one word and like feeling into it that way really just helped me not have that, oh, I think I've eaten too much today. Oh, I don't like this wouldn't be a good thing to have right now. Like that's going to make me bloated before I'm in a bathing suit. So those conversations no longer happen if I'm focusing on fuel as opposed to it being a mechanism that I use to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Again, like a mechanism
Yep.
of control, but
Yep.
truthfully, are something we have such little control over, um, except for, and I hate that it's been, and I hate this word too, but normalized is this extremely restrictive, constant monitoring of food intake to
Yes.
maintain a certain physique. And I just want to be like, that shouldn't be forever. I understand it as a learning tool, but like,
Yeah.
you can maintain looking pretty dang good and performing pretty dang well if you let go of all that too.
Yes.
Like,
I feel like I see a lot of that in the social media world when individuals share their experiences in regards to a bodybuilding competition, when they really dive into the emotional aspect of what it was like to be that restrictive for their cut period. And they're like, wow, that was a mental whirlwind of emotions and roller coasters that many of them are like, that's one and done for me. But, some people compete for years and they have to mentally engage with that sort of restrictive aspect in order to do their sport. And I think that I listened to a recent podcast. It was on the Bear podcast. And a woman had opened up about her experience with like, I definitely needed in that process to have a mental health support system
yeah,
because I loved bodybuilding, but that restrictive nature just was not sustainable long term. And I needed those safety guards to help keep me happy and emotionally healthy.
yeah, yeah. I think too, unfortunately, um, to stay adherent, a lot of athletes choose to do show after show. But in reality, to remain healthy and to progress in the sport, you do need a full off season. You
Yeah.
need an off season every
Yeah.
single time. Every time you do a show, you get feedback, you take an off season and you work on it. And then you pick 1, 2, 3 shows and you're the most conditioned and the most, perfect by that last show. And then
Yeah.
you take a long off season. And in that off season, things should be way looser. You should not be tracking every single thing that you eat. Like, I don't know, giving yourself that break. I think so many people fear that because of the loss of control and
Yes.
the binge eating that typically occurs post show. I think, unfortunately, athletes avoid a true off season. They just avoid it. They jump
Yeah.
right into a bulk, become
Hmm.
super uncomfortable, and force feed themselves. And then they immediately jump into a cut again. There's like
Yeah.
never any, there's no phase of normalcy in their
Yeah.
competition cycle. And I think that can also be because, like, pros, okay, cool. Like, you're making money, whatever. No sport at its most elite level is really completely healthy if you really break it all down.
Yep.
But for the average competitor, like, you don't need to do all that.
You can still live a life of enjoyment and have your
Yeah.
off season and come back to it and still be an incredible competitor.
Yes. And that, brings me to as well, I think for all sports, there should
Hmm.
be there should be an off season where,
Yes.
just like you do, you surf, you play with different sports, you're a hybrid athlete, maybe you just take up more hiking and trail running and you just take a
Hmm.
break from lifting as heavier. Well, I don't know, like you change the game a little bit so that when you come back to, if you're doing competition, or sort of cyclical planned out blocked programming, you actually want to do the work.
Yes. Yeah. You haven't burnt yourself completely dry and you still have a little bit of motivation left so you can use that discipline that you have. I
Yeah.
I completely agree. And I came originally from the competitive soccer world. I played for 17 years all through college. It was my life and I went through periods where I couldn't let go and I genuinely couldn't take an off season because I was so afraid. I needed that control of thinking like I was going to go into the next season just as strong, if not better. And I also really struggled because it was my conduit for emotional processing. I didn't know how to express emotions. And so when I didn't have it, I was like frantic looking for outlets.
Yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of people, we see that today too, will use the gym when they're feeling those deep emotions. And so even if they're in off season, they're like, I'm going to go extremely hard because I'm processing something that I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, just like you said, like the gym can be, and exercise can be a great conduit for the answers, but
Yeah.
using it as an avoidance method,
Yes.
not so much. Not
Yeah.
so much. Uh, so going from soccer into the more hybrid space now, how did you end up? Because I mean, your deadlift is crazy heavy. It's 400 plus. Your lifts are amazing, and you're also fast as hell. So talk to me about getting from competitive soccer, which is intense, over here where, what do you call yourself, a meat rocket?
My
I love,
legs are the meat missiles.
yes. I mean, I love it. I literally call myself a Clydesdale. So like,
I
I
love
love it.
it.
Like, tell me about that.
I have always just really loved challenges. And I'm starting to realize that more and more about myself, where I thought I was competitive. But as I've matured and gotten older and really repaired a lot of that internal dialogue, I realized that I'm very internally competitive and I love challenges. And so the idea of hybrid athletics and the idea that there's always a new challenge available, you just have to pick this space and sort of dive into it, is something that really speaks to me because that's how like my more intense action oriented personality feels like it's thriving. And so I definitely gave CrossFit my best whirl. And unfortunately, I am not a gymnast. In all honesty, I was just not a gymnast. And I tried so hard. And I thought that when I was going to start getting my first bar muscle ups and muscle ups, that I would fall in love. And I just remember sitting at the top of the rings and being like, oh no, like I'm, this is not for me. And so I left that space, and the only guidance that I really had was just watching people who were trying to blend heavy weightlifting and running at the same time. And I was like, that's kind of counterintuitive. Like, I want to give that a whirl, and started that, I want to say, like last March, and have just been so in love with my whole experience thus far. I've had just the most amazing time learning about myself and learning about different niche areas of hybrid athletics.
Sorry, my dog is like doing this hilarious thing in the background right now. So if you hear anything weird, it's my dog. But no, I think that's really cool too. Because Freya, can you not? Thank you. Can you not? Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Just the most spazzy spaz I've ever spazzed. No, I think that's really cool what you said about challenges, because I think I used to say that I wasn't competitive all the time, and I realized that in a lot of ways I am, but because I was always dealing with health issues and health concerns, it was just not a healthy space for me to be in mentally. I couldn't compare myself to people around me, and being competitive with the person next to me got me hurt 9 times out of 10. So like, I kind of shut that off. And when I found sport and then I started to get pretty good at it, it came back on. But then I was like, oh, I guess I'm competitive, so I need to compete. And I got like lost in that for a little bit. Like constantly trying to figure out the next thing or to do a way to, and this I unfortunately now realize was to prove myself, to prove that I was worthy of being in that space, to prove that I was worthy of whatever. It's very human and very natural, and it was easy to fall into. But I realize now, just like you said, I'm so much more intrinsically motivated. And I would so much rather be like, I want to climb this crazy mountain. I will do it by myself. I'll do it by myself. I don't care. I want to be able to climb it while also maintaining a strength total that makes me feel proud of myself. Not a certain number, not anything in particular. I don't need to do a meet ever. I just want to know that my strength numbers are where I know they can be. If I can do the same at the same time, I literally don't care. I don't care. And like realizing that was so freeing, because I was like, oh, I don't need to sign up for anything.
I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, I don't have to like change my training schedule around. I don't have to pick a thing to do on some arbitrary day and like hope that I get there healthy. Like I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. And it was just like this crazy like moment. And like
Yeah, that
it was
resonates quite a bit.
yeah, it was just so I started to push myself harder because I was constantly just like, how can I get better, instead of how can I fit into this space, or how can I be in this niche? It was just like, well, how can I just be the best athlete humanly possible? And am I having fun?
Yes. Yeah. That it definitely hits home for me. I became obsessed with climbing mountains in the past 2 years. And so I went summited the Tetons. I did Mount Whitney. I did Half Dome. I was like these long trails where I can just get into like this crazy mental space of you have to keep pushing yourself or you won't get to the top. Simultaneously also maintaining weightlifting has been like so much fun for me. And that challenge and that like mental space of, Laura, how are you going to balance this? Laura, where are you going to push? Where are you going to figure out what you need to do in order to achieve these goals? Has been the most like fulfilling athletic experience, definitely since I've had since soccer. So I agree with the mountaintops.
It's just so cool, I think, because it's like, I always say this, but like mountains, there's no space for emotional baggage on mountains.
Yep.
Like you can't carry it to the top with you. It's not
Yep.
going to make it. There's just no room for bullshit, and mountains don't care about you. They don't care how fit you are. They don't care how much experience you have. Like they're going to kick your ass and you better be prepared. Like, and you better be humble. Like, it's just like this educational experience that like, I can't say I've experienced it anywhere else except for like the ocean.
Yes,
Cause it's similar sort of, yeah.
the ocean will humble you so fast. At the first opportunity it gets, it'll make sure you know. Yeah.
Bitch, please.
Well, you thought you were going to stand up. How about I tuck you under for a solid 20 seconds here? Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely, I feel that. And I think that one of the things that I love the most too about being on the ocean or being on a mountain too is like the only way that you will accomplish the goal is if you find out that inner peace that you need, what to say to you inside your head in order to get there. So like with climbing the mountain, it's like, you've got to take a break here, grab some water, but then you need to resume the hike. And with the ocean, a lot of it is just so much confidence in being able to be like, this is the wave, I'm watching it, I'm paddling into it, I'm staying consistent with it. And in that pop up, trusting yourself on top of the board to make that decision of like, here we go, I'm on it, I'm staying with it. And that to me, like that mental sort of battle, I guess, of like those doubts that might sneak in and say, you're not good enough for this. You're not fit enough for this. Like, how am I going to overcome that? So I've loved that so much about those challenges.
This reminds me a lot of what you were talking about earlier too with the brace moment. How often do you personally or like as a tool with your clients use visualizing?
All the time. Oh, visualizing is such a key way to just really feel into that moment before it happens. And I think that so many people are stuck in that space of doubt where visualization is not even on the radar for them. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, I just so much believe that I can't do this that I've ever actually seen in my mind me completing this lift. And so, especially for bracing and learning what that feels like and looks like, just coming back to that of like, this is a brace, this is your spine, imagine your spine staying in this position throughout the lift. It's so important.
Do you ever encourage your athletes to create sort of like pre-lift? I don't want to say rituals because sometimes if they're too involved, they can become limiting, but sort of like a quick 1, 2, 3 set of actions that they take before every lift, or something that they do to set them up for that brace, that pause moment that draws them into visualizing a successful lift. Is that something that either you've had success with or that you use ever?
Whenever I step up to do any form of squat and the bars and the rig, I love to pound my chest into the bar before hopping
Yes.
underneath it. And
Yeah.
so I definitely talked with my clients about this. I usually show them a video of Jessica Butner deadlifting and setting up before her deadlift and sort of that like ritualistic, like I know I'm going to hit this lift setup that clicks you into that mental space of confidence and belief. I truly think that's what she does before she hits the barbell. And for me, just like taking ownership of the barbell, I love that as well. So I definitely share with them. I think a lot of individuals, the newer they are, the more like corny they feel. And I'm like, trust me, just give it some time and you'll fall in
Yeah.
love and you'll have your thing.
Yeah. Or like just keep doing it and like you'll find this set of things
Mhm.
that you do where you're like, what am I even
Yes.
doing?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. The
what?
foot screw in before cleans and stuff. You like watch yourself
Yeah.
on video. You're like,
You look
what
at your
is
fingers and you do this like finger thing every time and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, like before a jerk and you watch your pinkies like fly up, you're like, I didn't know I did that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fun.
Huh. I am doing the thing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, for me, there's always, I know it's going to be a bad squat day, not because the weight necessarily feels heavier, but like occasionally my chronic pain affects my upper back and my spine.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's like small fiber neuropathy. I'm not really sure. Haven't had it tested. I don't care. But there's just days where like my skin hurts. So like when the bar touches my traps and my skin and the weight hits it, it hurts. It hurts so much more than the discomfort of the weight. And I know on those days, it's so different from the days where it's not happening.
Yeah.
Um, and like my brain can't process through the discomfort. It can't. Like, unless because I've gotten to this point where I will literally just slam my back into the barbell and just
Yeah.
create this moment of like disinhibition for myself. And
Yeah.
then I will crank under and then I'll do the squat. And it's like, I'm so much more successful, but it looks so violent. And like, I've had people be like, you're terrifying. And I'm like, my brain's doing weird stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not filtering pain today. So like, I just need to just, I don't know, bludgeon myself. And I feel like that's anyone who does strength sports will be like, yep. Anyone else who doesn't do strength sports would be like, I don't want to do strength sports.
Yeah. I feel like I see that a ton on the videos that are like somebody's getting slapped on the back or like you're trying to like engage in that moment of like this is the most pain you're going to feel today. Whatever's
Yeah,
going on in your back or during the lift pales in comparison to this.
yeah,
So I definitely think that that's maybe like a form of like exposure engagement.
yeah.
Definitely a useful tool.
I I've used it before with clients before cleans as well because it's got to be
Yeah.
so explosive and there really does
Mhm.
need to the instant mental buy-in. Otherwise, you're just not going to produce the velocity you need. I'll tell
Yeah.
them to hit their own thighs,
Yes.
like
Yes.
actually hit their legs, and they're like, "What? Are you crazy?" And I'm like, "No, do it. Trust me." And they'll PR every time, and they're like, "I didn't think it would work." And I'm like, "Do you think I'm just telling you to hit yourself? Like, come
Just
on."
make things out of it. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And honestly, it falls in line with like when you're doing a strength endurance test. And so you go up a little bit above the weight that you're going to be moving. So deadlifts at 225, if you can warm up to 275, hit a couple lifts there, your
Yeah,
CNS connection is like, ooh, this is heavy. So when you hop onto the 225, your CNS is like, oh, this is light. We can move this.
yeah.
And so I feel like that sort of like pain exposure helps to put into perspective what you're doing and helps those PRs for sure.
Yeah, I do the pyramids a lot with clients, and they're always like, "Why do you have me hitting like a top single, but it's not my PR?" And I'm like, I don't actually care about that one.
Yeah.
I actually care about the reps that come
Yeah.
after it.
On the backside, you see that? That's where the work is right
There's
there.
the magic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that you said that because it's true. I use it all the time for myself, but
Mhm.
also I love using it with clients because they're like, "Oh, it felt so light and it felt so heavy in the warm up," and I'm like, "That's your brain."
Wow. I have a scientific reason for that.
Yeah, for once.
Yeah.
For once. No, that's awesome. So mountain climbing, running, and big mountains, weightlifting, CrossFit. I did the same thing. I did CrossFit for a while and was like, I love weights. I hate gymnastics.
Yep.
Uh, and so you just did the Battle Bunker. So you just went to regionals for Battle Bunker, which was awesome.
Yes.
Um, and you got to compete with Lauren Weeks. Calypso Sheridan was there too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Lauren Weeks is probably the most precious. Um, I want to say precious and like understated individual I've ever met.
I feel like so many girls coming out of that competition on the East Coast too. And I was watching Megan Jacoby lift. I was like, wow, because I feel
Yeah.
like the majority of the time their sport is high rocks and
Mm-hmm.
you're watching them come up to a barbell. And I was like, this probably isn't in your training a lot, but you guys are handling it like freaking champions. Like it was very cool to see. And I feel like it was one of those like true bridging moments of like, this is a area that maybe isn't well established in hybrid in terms of like competition setting,
Yeah.
but let's explore it. Like, let's see what we can get out of this and how we can test athletes.
Yeah. I really like that he included, oh, it's really heavy for women. But I was
Yes.
just stoked at the way that it pushed the women who were able to move those weights, yourself included, um, to really needing to work. Because I
Mm-hmm.
remember just a couple other competitions I've done, like the strength component was always something achievable for everyone, but it ended up being not heavy.
Yeah. I've
So,
seen
like,
it, yeah. I've
go
seen it
ahead.
a lot where it's more strength endurance as opposed to
Yeah.
a true like test of, hey, you're pretty tired after that first event. Let's rep a 3 rep, not like the combine was as a 3 rep max at your back squat.
Mhm.
Let's see this happen. And you're like, oh, wow, like that's a true strength measurement right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kept telling Hunter, I was like, just do a deadlift ladder. Just do a deadlift ladder. That's all I'm
Yeah.
asking. Just do a deadlift ladder. So it wasn't a deadlift ladder, but at least it was deadlifts.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think I liked the event spread both in the combine and in this. I think it was cool because it everyone I talked to who was going and participating had one event they were excited about, one event that they were like, I can do okay, and one event where they were like, this is gonna suck and I'm gonna do terrible. Like
Yeah.
everyone had one of each, and I just think that speaks to like the brilliant programming and that the demands of the events were such that no one athlete, unless they were truly well-rounded, Jacoby, were gonna, make it out. Clean swept to that. Just woof.
Yeah.
And she's also, I love her. She's such a supportive woman in hybrid sport and in the hybrid space. She's just so nice.
Yeah.
Um, and like, I don't know, I've got to say, being in the hybrid space and meeting all the women here, I've been in running, and trail running women are definitely way nicer and chiller than road running women. Um, just like cycling, like mountain bikers are like, yeah, bro. And then you talk to roadies and they're like, you're too slow. But hybrid, like, I think everyone's so stoked to see everyone else there.
Hmm.
And like, we all come from such drastically different backgrounds. Like, Calypso's a swimmer. Like,
Yeah.
not to discount all the work she's done after that, but like,
Yeah.
everyone has a super different background. Lauren was a collegiate swimmer. So, like, when we all come together, when you see someone who's better than you, but you see their background, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
bad. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. Everyone's been so supportive.
It was
Being, go ahead. I was
I
asking
was
how it
gonna
was.
say it's definitely a small community too. So you get to see people as they do these different events
Yeah.
just be tested in a way that they potentially haven't been tested before, which I
Mhm.
think is like it's just going to really help develop, especially in the coaching world, like these questions and fostering these communities of like, hey, I got exposed to this. I want to learn. I want to grow. Let's dive in. And you're like, all right, I'm ready. Like I'm here for this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think it's cool too, like seeing all these new hybrid competitions pop up. The biases of some of them, which are all perfectly okay. I'm of the
Yes.
mindset of like, if someone writes a competition, they can make it whatever they want. Um,
Yes.
when I did the Spartan Games, it was very endurance biased, super
Yep.
endurance biased. Um, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Spartan, like it's their competition. Um, and then there's other competitions that I've done or seen that are very strength biased that don't really test endurance. And I think it's funny because when I look at the people who write the programming, um, I think that if you're truly looking to test all facets of fitness, you need a board. You need like
Yeah.
5 people writing the workouts that are from different sports. You need a person who's
Yes.
really strong from a strength sport that's like, that's light.
Yep.
And you need a person from an endurance sport going, that's it.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
need that panel because I think it's really hard to write a test for a large group of athletes just using your own knowledge because you're biased and you have your own likes and dislikes. Like I think it's truthfully really, really hard.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so seeing the variety has been really cool. But, having competed in, both the combine and in that, like, is there anything that you wish you saw more of? Or is there anything that you kind of felt like you wish was tested in a different format for, I don't know, like even like limitation reasons or like some people just practice something more often and it's less accessible to another group, or is there really no way to overcome that? Like, I don't know what that makes you think of, but
Well, I think from the perspective of what programming went into the battle bunker and like what they were really trying to accomplish, there was an element of discomfort.
mhm.
And I truly engaged with that. And I was like, I know what movements are going to be uncomfortable for me. So I'm going to engage with that and I'm going to build with that. And I think that communicating and sort of like honing in on that's what we're really testing here would really bring out a new area where athletes can actually dive in and explore and looking at it from that perspective as opposed to like their traditional lens of how they do things. Like if I'm traditionally a strength athlete and I looked at that programming, I would be like, oh, screw the running. I'm going to just muscle through and everything's going to be fine. Whereas like if you look at it from a discomfort perspective of like, where am I lacking? How do I engage? You build that capacity and then really engage with the stimulus goal for that competition. And I think, from the whispers and things that are going on, the finals will be even more discomfort oriented. So I'm hoping from like a growing perspective too, that like that mentality of like things that I'm not comfortable with will be there and I want to show up super ready is like fully engaged with, because like the opportunities to do some of the things in the finals is like it's otherworldly. Like it's like very few people get the opportunity in this world. So it'll be really fun to see.
I think that's really cool because I think they did that this year with the Go Ruck games. Um,
Yes. When I was
they
watching the
really,
recaps of that.
yeah, they really switched the gears on that, and they
Hmm.
went in the direction of like full selection, full discomfort, and navigating stressful situations. And then they had basically like drill sergeants and leaders and things like that around them from the military, coaching them through this the same way they
Yes.
would their cadre. And I
Yeah.
think that is so cool because every athlete came out of it with a complete understanding of why it happened.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and so yard work is based off of Murph, right? And so if you look into why we do Murph and why we engage with that workout, understanding the movements in it and everything that goes into it, it sort of takes on a new life of its own. It's like, wow, this is this mental space that I haven't explored within myself or within this sport. And it really presents that opportunity to like engage in that discomfort way, which I think the military and military workouts do really well. I think that's their area of expertise if there ever was one. And so having that opportunity and being like engaged with it, I think is going to be a huge growing point for all of the athletes.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of, I think, what competitions need to differentiate for themselves too when they're writing these
Yes. Yeah.
workouts. You know, do we want to make this about, because obviously the way that the workouts were lined up was cumulative fatigue. And it was, if you won yard work, you had done so many push-ups so fast that to win the next workout with that max bench press was going to be very difficult. If you win the deadlifts, you've blown out your hamstrings. So you're going to have to do that run with
Yeah.
burnt up hamstrings. So
Yes.
I could see how they built upon one another and made each one after it more uncomfortable for someone who did well and someone who did poorly. So, you know, I think competitions really need to decide if that's the route that they want to go or if they want to have this clean, just fitness test. And
Yes.
are we going to set our athletes up for success? And what's
Yeah.
that going to look like? Because I think if you can differentiate and make that decision early on,
Yeah.
it's so much fun and get your
Yes.
athletes engaged with it,
Yeah.
rather than having them be like, well, why are we doing this? Why are
Yeah.
you making us do this before this? Because we would be stronger if you made us do it after. Like, but if you're like, no, this is literally the point,
Yes. Yeah.
they'll be like,
And I
oh,
feel like there are so many great like conversations going on right now of like, what actually is hybrid? What is a hybrid athlete? And like that offers the opportunity for anybody thinking of getting involved in the sport or like putting on a competition or an event to say, what hybrid aspect am I testing? Like, what am I
yeah.
doing here? And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just think that we're going to see so many more fun opportunities again to learn, especially as more and more sort of like outdoor sports get integrated and people
Yeah.
who come from a perspective of like, if you can do something in the outdoors, then you're truly hybrid to me. And seeing that element, I think it'd be really funny to watch some people try surfing for the first time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think
And just like,
that,
okay, so you're generally a good athlete. How well can you take all of the skills that you have and implement them here, and
yeah.
sort of like account for all of these variables? So seeing things like that too in the future, I think is going to be really fun. And I think certain events are going to hone in and target their intended stimulus. And then you can kind of be in the realm of that area. And then for me, it's always going to be like, I'll stick my baby toe into the endurance events.
Yeah.
And find, like which stimulus I'm gearing up for each time.
Yeah. The CrossFit Games kind of did that. Didn't they have them like throw a ball one year and then they did
Yeah,
like mountain biking, 5K, and
yeah.
like they did start throwing really weird sports stuff at them for a little bit. And now I think it's the point where like they've done everything. So
I know.
they
Like
should
I'm so curious what we're gonna see at the games this year. There's been
know.
trending on my social media are rope muscle ups. So instead of a hard
Oh,
barbell,
that's
I've
totally
seen a lot of
grid.
I've seen
That's too
that.
grid.
I know, I know. I've seen and then I know that they've done paddleboarding in some type of water outdoor element.
Yeah.
And so
First
I'm
fan.
wondering if we're gonna see more of that type of style integrated. I'm so curious. And I mean I love that they sort of do a test tease because then it allows for other people to see how well it went and they're like, all right, we can do that too. I see how that works.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think, and it's cool too, because I love CrossFit and that it exposes people to 100 different kinds of fitness and then
Yeah.
they can pick and choose
Yeah.
just like we did. But also from a televised perspective and a sort of, I'm so glad that they rescued themselves because I was like, CrossFit, don't you dare die. Um, they have a big enough audience where they're reaching so many people
Hmm.
with fitness and with the different modalities that are available, with the different body types. Like it's just so refreshing. And it's been
Yes,
such a, no matter what you feel about it overall, I think the difference it's made across the space of fitness has been just massive exposure
I
and
completely agree. 100%. That's,
and
yeah.
community.
I wouldn't have my experience as a hybrid athlete had I not found CrossFit first and it being
Yep.
my first exposure to try and do multiple things at once, because that's the
Yeah.
whole mentality behind it.
Hmm.
And so having that immediate, like, hey, you can do multiple things at once and try and be good at them is what led me into a more like niche area of hybrid space. I'd say more weightlifting and some type of endurance here and there. And so helping people facilitate and get into that area, I think is I'll always appreciate CrossFit for that. A thousand
Yeah.
percent.
And being able to be like, what did you hate? As a
What was
coach,
your least favorite movement? You can't
I
say
won't do it.
thrusters.
Yeah, yeah, we won't do that. It just instantly makes you everyone's best friend.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
no, this has been awesome. I don't want to keep you for too long. So I guess when you're thinking about, if there are athletes listening who haven't hired a coach or haven't done any kind of consultation or any sort of real concentrated self exploration work, how would you encourage them to get started? Because I know that there's a lot of barriers to entry, there's a lot of fear sometimes, and there's a lot of like, I have no idea where to start.
yeah.
Um, how would you encourage people to just dip their pinky toe and start that conversation?
I love that. I love that question a lot because it makes me think back onto my own experience. And to be honest, what I started to do was I started to watch and I started to look at who I resonated with and where certain athletes would express themselves. Especially what really hit me when I first started were athletes who wrote extremely open and vulnerable posts about this is what it's been like me for me to grow in whatever area it was. And I could find them and I could start watching and understanding what do I want out of my experience? And once you become a little bit more illuminated, it's easier to find a coach that helps to facilitate that new goal that you found. So definitely being hyper vigilant and looking around and seeing what's out there, but also being super strict too and saying like if this doesn't resonate with me, I don't have to follow it. I don't have to watch it. And really finding what resonates on an intuitive level and how you'd like to grow from there. I think is a fun way to start that exploration process.
Yeah, and I think even more, talk to people.
Yeah.
Just build
Yeah.
off that because I think I just randomly messaged you. And like that's how you make friends.
Yep.
But I think yeah, we're all stoked to be here. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are some people who do get so many messages that they just don't have time to respond to them all,
Yeah.
and I completely understand that. But I think for the most part, all of us had our own journeys to get to this place, and we really appreciate that you're somewhere in the middle of yours. So
Yeah.
like, we're not reach out, say
Yeah.
hi.
Yeah. Ask me questions. I'm an open book, I promise.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I love it, Laura. Thank you so much. If people want to find you on Instagram and they want to, let's say, ask you a question, what is your handle on Instagram?
It's at Laura Gordon with a double underscore.
Okay, I'll put it in the caption of the podcast as well.
Perfect.
And then if someone wanted to reach out to you for coaching or any other part of your work or anything like that, where should they go?
Email is best. Gordon, Gordon, period V, period Laura at gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys know me. I'm running peaches and complete human performance, blah, blah, blah. But Laura, thank you so much. This has been really awesome. I think I'm going to have you on again because I feel like there's so much we didn't even get to talk about.
I know.
Um,
This is so great. This is so fun.
but yeah, thank you so, so much. Um, yeah, I'm just so cool. Thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
on. And I'm just
no,
so
thank you. This is like, it's so refreshing to like be finally feeling confident in my space and my career and then connecting with people, like starting to do deep end fitness workouts and realizing that it fit completely in with like my life and what I want to do. And then like being connected with you, a lot of serendipitous moments this year so far. So I'm like really excited.
let them rain.
I'm like, bring it in. I'm ready. I've been through
Yeah.
the universe trials or whatever. I'm over it.
I love it. Well, yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have you on again soon.